welcome to the Mom I'm Home podcast. We're your hosts. I'm a Gen X mom. My name's Sarah.
And I'm a Gen Z daughter. My name's Anna.
We're trying to discover what it means to be brave, be willing to have that adventure of a lifetime, and how to feel at home.
Tune in every week.
Oh my gosh, welcome. It's our first podcast episode.
It is. It's so fun. I love it.
We've been planning this for a while, but I'm really excited. We're going to be sharing all about answering the call to adventure, but the beauty of coming home. Before we dive into today's topic, I thought it'd be really fun to do an introduction to our audience about what this podcast is all about and what the inspiration was behind it and what our intention is. Does that sound good?
Yep.
Good. So every August, there's a week or two because there's lots of school districts and there's lots of kids going back at different times. And I don't know if Anna's Instagram feed is flooded, but mine is. And it's all the Pinterest moms that are on Instagram showing off their cookies. They're showing off the cookies they bake for their kids. So I actually love baking cookies.
Yeah, and her cookies are the best cookies on the planet. I was like, Mom, after this podcast, everyone's going to be asking what your recipe is, and we're going to make a cookbook, and it's going to be great.
It's going to be so fun. It's going to be so fun. But here's the thing, is the first day of school, everyone's really nervous. You've got your new outfits. You go to Walmart, you go to Target, you go to the mall and get all these cute new clothes. And so you're wearing your best outfits and the kids go off, right? And moms are at home wondering, what in the world am I going to do with my 3 hours of free time or my 6 hours of free time? But then there's that moment when school's finished and the kids are running home and the cookies are all set out, and you're going to have this moment of this conversation, this reconnection. And so it's this anticipation of you guys coming home with your backpacks on and your new haircut and your new cute outfit, walking through the door, and you'd say, Mom, I'm home. And it's you stop everything. You stop everything what you're doing. Mom stops everything what she's doing. If Dad's at home, he stops everything what he's doing. It's tell me about your day. How did you like your teacher? Did you have someone to play with at recess?
Mm-hmm.
Well, what did you have for lunch? Right? And it's that moment of connection that happens after you've gone on an adventure. Right? So there's two things. Number one is, it's really important for us to be on an adventure. It's really important for us to leave the house.
Yes.
Figuratively.
Yes.
And literally. Right? And to go on an adventure. But there's also a lot of science that it's really good for our brains and for our development to have a safe place to come home to. And that's what this podcast is all about.
Yes. And we're going to dive into all sorts of things, not just about coming home, but it's a great way to kick off our podcast by talking about what this is all about and what that feels like.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. I love it. So, what we're going to be celebrating is, number one, is that we are from two different generations, right? I grew up in the 80s. I was an 80s kid. Anna grew up, she finished high school the year after COVID hit.
Yeah, so I was more of a early 2000s kid.
Yeah.
I'm 2002, so.
Yeah. So I have different experiences.
Yeah, I grew up with the Barbies movies, Blue's Clues, the Wiggles.
I was a latchkey kid.
No way.
No, it was so fun.
I don't know.
Well, latchkey kids were kids in the 80s where we'd have our keys with us at school and we'd walk home alone.
Okay.
And we'd have working parents.
Sure.
So there was a show called The Polka Dot Door. I'm having Zoobilee Zoo. Any listeners out there remember Zoobilee Zoo? Was one of my favorite. We watched people get slimed on TV when the Nickelodeon shows, so that maybe that was
was that really I didn't know that they've been doing that for that.
That's a cross-generational memory.
Yeah, because did you ever want to get slimed? Because
no,
never wanted to get slimed.
No, not. And then Kids Incorporated. I wasn't cool enough to have cable, but your dad had cable, and that was for cool people, and you could watch Kids Incorporated if you had cable. So that's a little bit about my background. The conversations we'll be having will be talking about the different experiences that we have But Anna and I spent a lot of time, since she was tiny, she would download at night.
Yes. Can you explain? Well, I'll explain downloading.
Yeah.
So I don't know when we coined the term download.
Our family
It's our thing. So when I was a kid, I'd go to school and I would come home and I would just like, I didn't want to talk to anybody when I got home. It was like, yes, hey mom, love you, cool. Be in my cave for a minute. But then at around bedtime, 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, I'd come up, and I don't know how much my mom loved it or hated it, because she just wanted to get her kids to bed, and it was like, no, Anna needs to talk to you for a few hours, actually. But I would come up, and I would just start talking to my mom or dad. I think it was mostly to my mom, right? And I would just unload every single small amount of information that my little brain remembered. I would just go on rambles and rambles, and I needed to get it out. And then after a point, like, it wasn't like it would go on forever. I would get to a point, and then it was like, okay, it's done. Like, your download is done, and then I wouldn't need to say anything else for the rest of the night.
Sometimes the download would happen consistently over a couple days, but quite often, and especially as you got older, you'd save up your material, and it's not every day.
Yeah.
It's not even every week.
Yeah.
And as you've gotten older and moved out of the house, it might be a couple times a month.
Yes.
But those are some of my most treasured moments as a parent, because it's so fun to hear, like, what is your experience and what does the world look like through your eyes? And you're not only taking out into the world what we've taught you at home, but then it's also you're making it your own. So this is one of the things that Anna and I talked a lot about as we're planning our podcast is we have a family cookie recipe. Anna's great grandma was actually a professional cookie baker, and I didn't know this at the time, but her name is very similar to her great grandma's name. It's not exactly the same, but it's almost exactly the same. We have this family recipe that's been passed down through the generations, but it's really interesting because different people who use the family recipe have made it their own.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So it's the same recipe, but it's tweaked just a little bit. Like, is it hand stirred or is it mixed stirred, or is it dark sugar or light brown sugar?
Is it butter or is it margarine?
Right. Or Crisco or shortening. And so that's the other thing, too, about this podcast that I think is a really great opportunity to dissect and to uncover is, like, what does the foundation of home allow us to do in the world? Is like it allows us to have a foundation as we go out into the world, whether as an adult or as a kid or as a young adult. But then we individually have to make it our own.
Right.
We individually have to make our self-development, our career, our faith, our family situations. We have to make that our own. And I think it's really beautiful in context of being a mother and daughter and being a family is to having the conversations. So we're not doing that research and discovery on an island. We're doing it together, but individually we can make it our own.
Right. And there's not a feeling of like, you have to do my cookie recipe this way, or it's not going to be good, or you're not allowed to use it, or you're never going to eat my cookies if the recipe is different. It's like you're really free to do your own thing. And of course, like, different family culture is going to change how this dynamic works, but at least that's what we want to create in our home and in our podcast too, of like, we want to give you these insights. We want to give you these things that maybe you relate to, and then you're going to go out and you're going to make it your own.
Yes. Oh, I love that. I love that so much. I thought I was really smart when I was about 16.
And
I think that's a pretty common experience.
Yeah, I thought I was like the smartest person on the block.
And I kind of looked down upon adults who were struggling. Honestly.
Really?
I did. I remember a moment when I was like, I pity that adult for struggling so much.
Wow.
Right? Because when you're 16,
right,
like, you don't have any real heavy responsibilities in terms of like financially taking care of yourself or taking care of other family members. And you're almost at the pinnacle of your education, right?
Right.
And I think it's a pretty common experience. I don't think I'm the only one.
Yeah. There's something like there's a know-it-all hormone happening, probably.
I think there is. I think the scientists would agree with us.
I think, hey, scientists, let us know.
And here's the thing is that I'm a little bit away from 16 now.
Just a little.
Couple more rotations around the sun. And I don't feel as smart now as I did when I was 16.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
But I think, wasn't it you that was saying, like, people who know more know that they know less than what's out there compared to people who don't know that they don't know anything and I think they're really smart?
So let me explain for the listeners out there.
Yes, please.
I don't know what scientific method, whatever this is from. It's not just for my brain, though. So, show notes have the information.
But basically, show notes.
Basically, it's this idea that the less you know about something, the more you think you know about it. And then once you get to a certain level of knowledge about a new topic, like let's say, for example, I'm an artist, and that's something that's probably going to come up a lot. But for me, when I was 16, right, I started drawing, right? And at first you're like, okay, it shouldn't be that hard. Like I can figure it out. I know everything about drawing once I get to this certain point. But once you keep studying and a few years down the road, you're like, okay, I know way more than I knew when I was 16, but now I understand just how broad this topic is, and I understand just how little I know about it. And so that kind of concept is, I think, applicable to basically anything.
Exactly. Yes. Well, and that's the beautiful thing about having a body and being alive.
Oh, yeah.
Is because this idea is like as a parent and a child, there's this natural teaching, learning kind of relationship. But I think the beautiful thing about having an adult child is that it's not just that I'm the teacher and you're the student. It's like that we can learn from each other.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And as we respectively have more experience in different areas, we can be sharing what we're learning. And as we're experiencing our own lives, the tragedies and the opportunities and the successes and the failures in life, that we collectively can learn from each other and realize that there are so many teachers and there's so much opportunity to learn.
Yes.
So there are new struggles that I have now that I never had when I was younger, but that means I have an opportunity to learn more.
Right. And understanding you're like, just because I feel like I know less doesn't mean that I'm not learning continuously. And like, I want to really just keep working on my knowledge and keep learning and being willing and open to learning and not shutting it down. Because I think this isn't the case for everyone, but it is common as you get older to settle in your ways and to settle in your knowledge and say, okay, this is like, I basically know everything, and especially as you're older, like maybe that is more of the case than it was when you were 16. But understanding, like, even if you're 50 years old, there's always something to learn, and we can learn from each other. The generations can learn from each other. Older people can learn from younger people. Younger people should learn from older people.
Yep. Yeah. I love that. Which reminds me, so Anna has this thing where she curates media for individuals in our family.
I do, yes.
And it's based on their preferences and likes. It's really nice.
I like their TikTok algorithm. And this was kind of worse when I did have TikTok. Like I said, I had to I can't control my media usage. So I had to kind of calm down. But no, yeah, I used to just go through and I'd be like, okay, this one, oh my gosh, this is perfect for mom's feed. Like, send that.
So she'd curate and like send TikToks or send Instagram reels to the individual, and then she'd come home on the weekend and we'd be like, okay, it's time to watch my curated my videos that I sent you.
Here's 45 videos just for you.
And they're so fun. But here's the thing that I wanted to point out is that a lot of times what Anna would do is she's like, okay, wait, let me explain.
Yeah.
So then she'd give us, me or her dad specifically, context to be like, this is the word and this is what it means now. This is what the kids are talking about. And this is why it's funny. And then we would watch the video.
Yeah.
Right? Otherwise, I'd watch it and be like, I don't know what that means.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then Anna's dad and I would try to be really funny and like use the modern slang words on purpose just to make our kids uncomfortable.
It's comedy for a 45-year-old to look up. We think it's so funny. And to just go through the Google slang. It's so funny.
We think we're so funny. And the point of this all is like, I can learn from my daughter.
Yeah.
I can learn from you. And I do.
Yeah.
And it's so cool when you can learn from me. That makes me so happy. I wanted to actually start this conversation with a study I learned about last year about rats. because rats,
Rats are so smart.
they are
Actually.
so smart.
I thought you hated rodents.
I don't love them. I'll admit it. But I'm glad that they're there.
I'm glad that they can teach us how to cook better. I'm glad that they can be in our hats and make us move around.
Let's discuss. Wait a minute. There's already a movie about that. Okay, so there was a scientist who was studying the effects of stress in parent-child relationships. I thought this was so fascinating. And I think this study really articulates the beauty of coming home and the impact of the adventure and of coming home. But how it's really important for us to create structure around that type of stress. So let me tell you about the research study, and then we can apply it. Okay, we're going to make it our own. Okay. And so there were these different groups of mama rats and baby rats. And when the mama rats were separated from their babies for about 15 minutes, which was enough time for the natural stress response to kick in. But in that time period, it wasn't too much for the baby rats. And when the baby was reunited with its parent, the mother rat was able to literally hug and cuddle and lick and coddle and like nurture that child. But this is the really fascinating thing, is that when those baby rats were older, they actually performed higher because they learned that they could handle stress really well. Is that interesting? So a little bit of stress isn't actually bad. Okay. So that was the first group. The second group, the parent rat and the baby rat were separated for 3 hours instead of 15 minutes. And everyone was super stressed out. The baby was so stressed out and the moms were so stressed out that then when they were reunited, they were so stressed out that the mother couldn't calm her child down. The mother couldn't self-soothe or soothe the child and then couldn't help the baby re-regulate. Long term, it's set up for a lifetime of difficulty managing stress for those baby rats. Okay. So this is really interesting, is like having a little bit of stress is actually really important for us. And I'd love to hear sometimes in your life when having that stress helped you finish a goal or cross the finish line.
Yeah. One of the most recent things is I just worked really, really hard to get into my illustration program at school. And I think just a little bit over a dozen students got in. And for me, that was like this really stressful thing. It was just one of those things where I knew that it was important to push myself, and I knew what I needed to do. And I really, used a lot of ways to push towards that goal. But it was really, really stressful. But in the end, I got in and I did it. Yay. So, I mean, there's so many other times too when that's applicable, but
yeah,
that's
for sure.
Recent.
Well, it's like you have a deadline and you have a desire and you have a goal and you're pushing it. But it's like without the deadline, you wouldn't have done the gargantuan amount of work you needed to do.
Yeah.
Most of us don't do that level of performance unless there's some kind of win or some kind of deadline, right? But being in that state of prolonged stress over a really long period of time would have been detrimental to you.
Yeah, and I'm at the stage where obviously if someone my age were being like super coddled by their parent all the time, constantly, you'd be really, really like concerned for them, because you're like, what are you doing, man? Like, you can't even go out into the world by yourself,
Right.
Right. So there is a level of like, okay, being out in the world on your own. That's like the whole point of this podcast, is go out into the world on your own, experience life, do the hard things, and then after that work is done, and even if you're just tired during the work, that's when you can come back and you can rest.
So it's really interesting because in this study, like stress was a positive thing because there was a separation, and then it actually helped wire those babies' brains into creating resilience, right? But then you have this toxic stress. If it's prolonged, if it's frequent, if you're not getting enough support, then it actually is damaging long term, right? So obviously this is a study with rats, but don't you think it applies? Oh, you think like this could apply to parenting and children?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So I think the important thing is like recovery time and having a safe environment to come home to is the key to being prepared to take the adventure. That is actually the formula, right? You said something earlier today about that, about it's having a safe and supportive home that allows you the fuel to go out and adventure.
Mm-hmm.
And it's having a home while you're on the adventure that allows you to really live out fully.
Yeah, absolutely. I think those two things are so important for each other. You need to have a home to come back to so that you can take everything you've learned from your home and from your experience of life and from your love and take that with you out into the world and use those tools and the devices to be on your adventure. And then once you're on your adventure, you're like, hey, yeah, I'm tired. And yeah, this is kind of complicated. And maybe I can't work through everything in my head on my own. So that's when I can come home and I can be like, hey, be honest with me. Like, what can I be doing right now that's going to help my adventure and help my growth, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's not just about coming home and being like, oh, here's your warm cookie, and here's your blanket, and here's your milk, and don't worry about anything. Yes, that is a part of it, and that is, like, very important. But for me, it's more about being like, sometimes you need someone that knows you and that's willing to be honest with you and that's willing to be like, hey, dude, like, the thing that you're doing right now, I see that. Well, you wouldn't call me dude, but, you're like, hey, maybe the thing that I'm seeing, maybe there's another way that you can do it and you can shift your mindset. And maybe we're not the victim in this. Maybe we are the powerful one in this. Maybe you are your own hero and maybe you can do it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the strength that really helps me to be like, okay, I can do it and I can do hard things. And it's so important to me, at least, to have a place where I can be fully honest and they can be fully honest with me about where maybe I can do better.
Right. But it's like you're coming back to home base to regroup and to rest so that you can go back out into the world and
kind of
conquer.
Yeah, it kind of it feels like I just have this vision of like a scene in a movie where they have this map, laid out on the table and they have all these pins, and they're sticking the pins in this part of the, wherever they want to go on the map and they're strategizing and they're like, okay, where are we going to go from here? What's happening here? Oh, we can't go this way. Oh, maybe we should try to go this way. Or, and you're getting food and you're getting the water you need so that you can really, get back up and try again. That's how it feels to me.
I love that so much. So there's this book called The Book of Joy written by the Dalai Lama and Desmond Tutu. For those listeners who don't know who they are, they're really, really, really impactful leaders in the Catholic Church and I think Buddhism. Dalai Lama maybe it's Taoism. I apologize. Anyway, they talk a lot about fight or flight in the book. And I thought this was so interesting. And it was described in a way that I had never heard before. But the Book of Joy is where I got this information. And so our body has several different states. Rest and digest is kind of a coin phrase of like that you are in a place of calm, that you can regenerate, you can digest your food. Like you're not running, you can digest your food, right? And then there's fight, flight, freeze, and fawn. And I think in our culture, like you've heard that, right? This kind of like buzzwords, fight or flight, and the kind of the self-development world. But I think quite often there's this really negative connotation about that it's bad if we're in fight or flight. And the authors of this book were making this really cool assertion. Fight or flight is actually the transformation of our body into becoming a superhero. So if you think about if you're coming into a dangerous situation or you're coming to a situation where you need to be at your very, very peak, your body, when it is chemically triggered to go into fight or flight, your major muscle groups have extra blood. You have more oxygen pumping through your lungs. Your eyes can focus really, really well. Your hearing is more acute. And so I really, really love this author had this phrase of if we can think about fight or flight in a positive way, then it becomes like, oh my gosh, my body is actually transforming into its most optimal self. And the key, I think, here is that we should only be in that state for a short period of time.
Yes. Yeah. I was going to say, because if you're in that for a long, long time, that's when the trauma.
That's like the baby mice that's away from mama for 3 hours versus 15.
Right.
Like, our bodies aren't designed to be in that state all the time.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, but this is the phrase. I love this so much. I rise to the challenge.
Mm-hmm.
That if you're in a state of stress, whether it's at school or new friends or new work opportunity or travel or whatever, and you feel your heart pounding, you feel that like rush of blood to your face, saying to yourself, I rise to the challenge. Like, my body is actually transforming molecularly to help me be at my optimal at this really critical moment. So when I think of the term, I rise to the challenge, I almost think like of the Avengers, when Iron Man is putting on his super suit.
Oh, yeah.
So I think if we can think about stress in a new way, it helps it to be a positive experience instead of a negative experience.
For me, something similar to that catchphrase was just courage.
You've been talking about that a lot.
In so many parts of my life before, when I was really scared, I didn't know, where I was going, and I didn't know quite what I was doing. I was really nervous. There was a lot of anxiety. And the word that kept coming up was courage. Have courage. Be courageous. You're strong, And so for me, if I'm able to be like, yeah, have courage, if that's, rise to the challenge. Yeah, I love having a little catchphrase or a little something to get me going. Because just being like, okay, hey, having courage doesn't mean that you're not scared. There's different ways to go about it, but for me, it doesn't mean that I'm not scared. It's that despite being scared, I still rise to the challenge. I still go out and I do. Even though I'm scared, I'm having courage. I'm choosing courage because being nervous and being scared, that doesn't feel very voluntary to me. That feels like a very natural response. It feels more like a product of something rather than a choice that I was making. And so if I was able to be like, hey, I can have courage, I can rise to this challenge, that gives me a choice. That's a choice and a decision that I can make of like, hey, I'm scared, but I'm still going to do it regardless.
I love that so much. And having a phrase that you program allows it to become automatic when your body chemistry is taking over.
Yes.
Right? Our amygdala is like the bouncer in our brain that's checking for fear. And so your amygdala, if it's scanning for something dangerous and it's responding and it thinks that you're in danger, it will respond so quickly that the rational part of your brain that's like, well, actually, probably not going to die, and your amygdala will actually shut off access to your rational thinking. And with intention, it takes 15 to 20 minutes to get your amygdala to calm down.
Yeah.
So it's like the fight or flight, if we can think of it as a positive thing instead of a negative thing, and you'll hear that a lot when we talk, and having a catchphrase of like, I'm not just going to go down this path because that's the super highway of my brain is saying that I'm in danger and I'm going to shut down and I can't do but like, I can be courageous.
Yes.
I rise to the challenge.
Yes.
But if I can hold space for being brave while at the same time transforming my brain and body into the superpower, I think that's where real growth comes.
Well, yeah, and there's multiple levels to that because you are deciding to create a new neural pathway in your brain and also giving yourself grace when you don't get it the first time. Because I think what happens is we're like, I'm going to have courage, and then you go out to the world and you're like, oh, I'm a little bit scared. It didn't work out the first time. Oh no. And then you run back into your cave, and then there's shame and there's guilt because you're like, I told myself I was going to have courage and it didn't work out the first time. And so I guess I'm a failure.
And I had courage and I failed. So I better not have courage and do this scary thing anymore. That was too painful.
But if you're able to give yourself grace and be like, hey, this is going to be a new thing and I'm going to give myself permission to fail. I'm going to give myself permission to succeed. Whatever happens is going to happen. But regardless, I'm not a failure of a person because I tried something once and it didn't work out the first time.
Right.
It's like I kind of have this this plague of if I do something the first time and I'm not perfect at it the first time, I'm like, I guess I'm never trying this thing again. I'm like, maybe I'll take up sewing. And if I'm not an expert sewer by the first time, I'm like, well, guess I'm never doing that again. I'm gonna be a granny who can't sew, and it's gonna be so sad.
I love what you're saying, Anna, is like being courageous is the reward. Being courageous is like is the reward in of itself outside of what happened because of it. And I think that if we can understand stress and how stress affects our bodies and how stress impacts our brain, it's not only nice, but it's actually vital. It's actually vital to have routines and structures and systems to help our nervous system and our body system and our brain system to come home and to rest.
Yeah.
And if you've had trauma, if you've had childhood trauma, or if you've had difficult experiences, sometimes that's where the work that Anna and I talk about, that's where that work has to come into play so that you can find ways, because you can come home and quote unquote rest without actually letting your nervous system rest. But that's actually the goal, is to get how can you get your nervous system at a molecular level, your body at a molecular level, to rest and digest.
Yeah, and I think that's so important to have understanding when there is trauma, when there is hardship, and there's that's really difficult. And so that home for you might be somewhere inside your own body, and being able to find that part of yourself. And that if that part of yourself doesn't feel safe because you don't know what home feels like yet, that this is your opportunity to find that understanding and heal that home within you. It's not just, let me go out to this physical place. Let me go to this physical place that has a bed where I can rest. It doesn't have to be that. It can be a certain person that you go home to. It can be a community. It can be within yourself. You're like, hey, I'm giving myself permission to have this rest. It doesn't have to be my biological mom's house, right?
Right. And I want her to come home to her biological mom.
And for me, right, I'm just saying for the listeners out there, a different situation. For me, I'm very fortunate, and I do have that. And I'm just recognizing that.
I'm being a little bit facetious, just joking a little bit. But I don't want to underplay what you just said, because I think what you said is so important.
Yes.
And I, like I mentioned before, I'm a huge proponent of therapy. But there's so many modalities. There's so many, like massage therapy and traditional cognitive behavioral therapy and attachment theories, and so many great coaches out there.
Yes.
That this is your invitation. The universe is talking to you if you're listening. If you feel like, I don't know where home is, or I don't feel home enough,
right,
that might be an opportunity for our listeners to, like, what other tools are there for me to feel at home within my own body and within my own space and in my own mind.
And there are therapeutic tools that you can use even if therapy isn't an option for you right now. There is journaling, there is exercise, there is all sorts of things that you can do independently on your own that are healthy ways without having to have the resources. Because I know that's a hard thing for a lot of people. Another thing, I've been watching this guy. I don't remember what his podcast is called. I just barely started, but he talks a lot about finding your people, finding your tribe, and how important it is for you to, for me, it's like to have your girlfriends, have your guy friends, whatever. Have those people that you can come back to and feel like you're in a community of people that are loving and supporting you. That is also such a therapeutic experience.
Amen. And it's also not just a nice thing to have. It's actually a biological need. So there is a book called Come As You Are. It's a really good book about women's sexuality. And there's a whole chunk, a chapter in there about fight, flight, or freeze. And I was so shocked because our bodies will actually prioritize our needs based on surviving. So, for example, if you are being strangled and you can't breathe, you're actually not going to be hungry. Makes sense, right? But if you're really, 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 really thirsty, you're not going to care if you're in the crowd. You're not going to care if you're in the in crowd because water's more important. But right up there in terms of biological need is community. Did you know that?
Mm-mm.
So, and I think it's really interesting because we're in an environment now where our community is on TikTok and it's on Instagram, and it's like we just came out of this COVID season a couple years ago where our community was stripped away from us. But being part of a community is actually a survival. It's a creation of survival. Because if you think about if you're in the bush and you're in a tribe and you get kicked out of the tribe, you're going to get eaten by a lion.
Yeah.
But isn't that the same today?
Yeah.
You look at the epidemic with violence, and that's not what the podcast is about, but the epidemic of violence that's a direct correlation with isolation.
Mm-hmm. And I feel I've gone through seasons of not extreme isolation, but of self-preservation isolation.
Yes.
And so
because you're prioritizing a different need over the connection.
I've had seasons where I have dealt with severe, there were a lot of things going on, but lots of depression, anxiety kind of symptoms. And I chose to self-isolate in order to protect myself and in order to create some sort of feeling of control, right?
Mm.
And while I, at the time, thought that was the best thing for me, and that was such a natural response. Like, I'm not going to blame my past self for the reasons why I chose to do that. In the long term, it created a lot of issues, a lot of problems, a lot of things where I felt so disconnected from any sort of tribe because for me, that was my solution. And after a lot of therapy and things, I'm able to not self-isolate as much and to kind of get out into the world. And I went on a really fun adventure doing a cool program, and I did all these things that really pushed me out of that self-isolation mode. And it was like, hey, you just moved across the country by yourself. You have to find a tribe. Like, it is do or die. Like, you cannot not have a tribe while you are. I knew just how important that was. So the moment I got out of my Uber to this new place all the way across the country, all by myself, the first thing I did, after self-isolating for so long, for whatever reason, I was like, I gotta make some friends. And so the first thing I did, right when I got out of the Uber, I saw the first person that I saw sitting on a bench. I was like, I'm gonna be friends with that guy. And I went up to him and we were friends. And then I walked over this other way and I found another friend. That experience, I think, taught me so much. And as I continued to be on my own across the country, I still came home. I say that in air quotes because I wasn't able to actually come home. But I would call and I would say how awesome it was and how much I was learning. But it was scary and it took a lot of courage. But over time, I created my own tribe, and it was the first time I felt like I had the power to do that I had the power within myself to make that happen. And I didn't ever think that I would, but having that tribe, I think that opened the door for me to be the happiest that I've ever been in my life.
That makes me so happy. That makes me so happy. And Anna's friends who are listening to this, you know who you are. But isn't it interesting that your brain specifically, our brain collectively, would require isolation for survival in one circumstance and would require a tribe for survival in another instance? And so I think that, like, it's like if we're making this recipe our own, because both of those things are in the past.
Right.
So then you get to choose. It's like, well, which version of self-preservation am I going to walk forward with? And I know Anna well enough to know the answer to this question. The people who are listening, like, you have to decide which version creates the result you want. And it's not always the version that your brain is telling you in this moment.
Oh, yeah. Yes. Because you might, right at this moment, be hearing this and you're like, I need to run away. Like, this feeling, maybe you have a feeling the feeling that's coming up is I'm scared of this feeling that's coming up and you're requiring a lot of me, and maybe you're in self-isolation mode and you're like, I can't, and you're trying to run away. I want you to take a deep breath. Maybe give yourself permission to just feel that feeling. And you will know what to do with that feeling, right? I'm not going to tell you what to do with that feeling. Maybe you want to journal something. Maybe a feeling came up where you're like, whoa, that's something new. That's scary.
There are actually no tigers in the room.
Plot twist.
Like, our brain and our body is like, I'm actually going to die. And I'm not saying that facetiously, because our brains are so powerful that we actually believe that we're in that much danger.
Mm-hmm. And I know if I were to hear advice like that, when I was in such a self-isolation mode, I would take that as guilt and as shame. And I'm just here to tell you, I'm not saying these things in order to shame you into living the life that looks right. Something that worked for me may not work for you, but girl, I want you to just consider it for a minute. Come into that feeling not in a place of fear, but in a place of excitement, of joy, of a place of like, this is so cool. Like, I jumping up and down with joy. Like, I get to create my own adventure and there's nothing stopping me.
I love that so much. And I love what you said, because fear and excitement is actually the same thing. And our body is actually the same feeling. So again, can we shift being like, I'm so scared, I'm in danger. Same exact feeling, being like, I'm so excited. Like,
have you ever auditioned for a musical, right? Like, for me, whenever I would try to like audition for something, I'd get so nervous and my legs I would want to like crumple on the floor and they'd get all wiggly and squirrely, and then the inside of my stomachs would want to like wrap up and tangle, and then your voice like starts to wobble and like you have no control. You got like these noodle arms. You feel like one of those, those like balloon things that are at the outside of a gas station, and they're like wiggling. They look like a pool noodle that are like waving in the wind. And that's kind of how my body feels like when I'm really, really nervous, right? But I contrast that to, let's say I'm at Disney World and I'm standing in line and I'm so excited to go on the ride. And those two feelings, if I really am comparing them, they're the same.
I love that. And I want to go on a roller coaster.
I mean, unless you hate roller coasters.
So I wanted to share a story that has nothing to do with home, but that really, 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 I think, emphasizes what you're trying to say. Well, I went skiing with my husband. Best snow on earth. It was like so incredible. And I'm a seasoned skier, but I haven't been skiing a lot recently. And so if anybody is out there skiing is really fun when you know you can stop. And in order to know you can stop in any terrain, you have to be really strong.
Mm-hmm.
So we were at the beginning of the season, and my legs weren't very strong yet. And we went, and it was a fresh powder day. And so my little tiny blue square secret run is now roped off, and it says experts only. But to not go on the run, I have to hike about a mile with my skis and my ski boots up the mountain. So we're like, well, I guess we're experts today. And again, when I was 16 or 21 or 25, I would have been like, yeah, no big deal. My whole philosophy was, if you're not falling, you're not getting any better. And so I would do stupid fun stuff and because I'm Gumby, right? So I'm looking, and it's absolutely gorgeous. There's 3 feet of powder, and this glitter is just all over me. My ski is under about 3 feet of powder, and I'm in this fetal position, totally suck. It's crazy. I finally get to the position where I can almost get on my own, but if I get above, on top of my skis, there's a 30-foot drop off right in front of me, and so if I get on top of my skis, I might fall. It's just crazy. So anyway, long story short, I end up taking my skis off. I get on all fours. I stand up. I finally get my skis on, and I'm exhausted. My quads are totally tired. And I'm at the beginning of this trail. I have to make it down the trail. And it's this gorgeous day, and there's pine trees, and there's this glitter in the air, and the sun has come out, and this powder run. And I'm equally terrified and so excited. I am going to live full out in my body, and I am honoring my life in mortality by skiing today. And that, like, the feeling of, like, I'm going to take advantage of every second. And the moment of, like, this is way harder than I was bargaining for. I don't know if I'm strong enough to get down the mountain. Pleading for help that I would stay on top of my skis for the rest of the run. But the feeling I had was like, I want to honor my mortality. I want to honor the experience of being in my body and living full out. And I feel like, especially as I've aged and as gotten older and had more responsibilities, I feel like I often say no to that because I'm so busy.
Right.
Or because it takes extra time.
Right.
But I think we can honor our creation and the opportunity we have by continually putting ourselves in situations where we're experience exhilarating, challenging joy.
Yeah. And I think going back to, talking to the people that are in that self-isolation and going, how do I get from this into flying down a mountain on my skis, right?
We weren't flying that day, but yes.
I just want to make you sound cooler, and you're making it hard. So cool. I just want to make you cool. But how do I get, because right now, those people, they're just surviving.
Yeah.
And being the person, and I'm not saying this as like, oh, I've never been there, girl. But how do you go from just surviving, just taking it moment by moment, to being like, I'm excited for my future. I'm excited to where this mountain is going to take me. I'm excited to see what's on the bottom.
Right.
Now, I can't quite relate to the excitement of skiing because I detest it. But I cried at the top of the mountain because I had to get down.
And what did I tell you?
You said, you got to get down the mountain somehow. And then you said, bye. And so I'm sitting at the top of this mountain, and I think that's actually a great connection point to these two feelings, right? Because you have the people that are really excited. They're at the top of the mountain. They're like, this is so awesome. I get to fly down the mountain, And then you have the people that are at the top of the mountain, and they're saying, I'm scared of this. And I don't know exactly how to make this work. Like, there's snow in my boots, and it's really cold, and it's wet, and my socks are wet, and they're soggy, and they're sloppy, and they're gross, and there's my, hairs, flying into my mouth, and it's all, gross, and my nose is cold. There's nothing to make your nose warmer, unless there is, that I need to discover it. But, if I cover my face with one of those mask things, then I can't breathe, and then I'm gonna, dry. It's just, it's hard, and I think this is great. It's like life.
But you have to get down the mountain.
And somehow you have to get down the mountain. So
you literally, you have to get down the mountain.
Yeah.
Unless you're going to call up a snowmobile, which those are free, by the way, if you get hurt on the skiers or yeah.
Look,
the medical treatment after the snowmobile is not free. But they're not coming unless you get hurt. And the goal is to not get hurt.
Right.
And so if you're in school, if you're working a postpartum mama and you're at the top of a mountain, and that can feel like a huge mountain, you have to get down. Right?
Yep.
Guess what? Anna got down.
I did.
And she enjoyed the rest of the evening or the daytime at the lodge with hot cocoa.
I did. All by myself.
She's like, that's cool.
My 8-year-old brother was also like, dude, I'm going back up. I don't know what you're doing.
Right.
I was so frustrated because after a few rounds, we had this ski pass, which was awesome. And my siblings would go all the time. But, after an experience like that, I was a wimp. And I was like, well, I'd rather sit here. And sometimes that's okay.
Well, and that's okay. But at that point, you have to get down the mountain.
Yeah.
There are some days when you feel like you are on top of the world and you can solve all the problems. And then there are some days your win for the day might be like, well, I did have a shower and I did actually get dressed for the day. And so I think that for me, one of the ways I've gotten through really difficult challenges is that I've celebrated the win wherever I was at that day.
Yeah. And that's really hard sometimes.
One of the things that Anna and I talk about a lot is food, water, shelter. Base, we have to have our food, water, and shelter taken care of before we can have the need of order and structure. And so if you're struggling do the basics. Looking at, are you sleeping? Are you eating?
Yeah.
And if you are eating, can you improve the quality of your food? Right? Tell one more story. When I was 13, 14 years old, I went to Dallas on my own. I had cousins that lived there, and I love spending time with them. And I was traveling to Dallas on my own, and I had to stop in the Denver airport. If y'all haven't been to the Denver airport, have you even lived?
I haven't lived, apparently, because I don't think I have.
The Denver airport's ginormous. And it turns out that I landed, and I looked at the gate agent, and she told me where my connecting flight was. Well, I had to go underneath the airport, and there was this huge long terminal, and I had to walk/run almost a mile because it's such a big. It was like a mile away. I ended up going down the hall, taking an escalator to underneath the airport, walking on this fancy runway, going up the escalator to this totally different part of the airport. And when I got to my connecting gate, they said that the connection to Dallas had moved to another location in the airport. I was on a time crunch. I was by myself before cell phones. Okay?
Yeah.
So what did I do? I went back to my gate because that's what you do, right? So then I made the trek back to my gate. And at this point, I was getting really stressed out. I was really worried, and I was afraid to talk to people because I didn't want to cry. And I was confused, and I was alone. I didn't know if I'd make my flight. So I pulled my trusty quarter out of my pants pocket. And in those days, we had to put a quarter in a machine and grab a telephone and put it on. I called my mom. All I needed to do was hear my mom's voice. And of course, I burst into tears because I was scared and I didn't know what to do. But I heard my mom's voice, and we talked about what had happened. She helped me know that I was going to be okay. She walked me through what I needed to do, and I was able to collect myself and calm down enough. I hung up the phone from her. I went and splashed water on my face, and then I talked to a gate agent, and they helped me find the right place. That's a pretty stressful situation.
Oh, yeah.
I don't have a credit card to buy another flight. But I just think as we're talking about home, is so interesting because I was out in the field. I was on an adventure. I was doing something to go visit my cousin, right? And I was faced with a really stressful situation. And the first thing that I wanted to do was I wanted to call my mom. And hearing her voice allowed me to be authentic, allowed me to be like, I didn't have to pretend like I was okay because I wasn't. I was really scared at the time. But she was able to calm me down, help me know that I was going to get home and that I was going to be safe on the flight. And I was able to finish the adventure. Right? So as we're coming to the end of this podcast, we've been talking about, number one, is having the courage to go on an adventure. Having the courage to making something new, creating an experience, whatever that looks like for you. But then also choosing to create structure and choosing to create an environment and choosing to create a community that you can come home to.
Yes.
That you can have that safety to calm your mind, calm your body, calm your spirit, so that you can reset to keep going on those adventures.
Yeah. And I think what I would tell the listeners, an easy thing that I love to do, this is one of my favorite things. This can be something from your own mind, or maybe you were inspired by something in our podcast, but I would say just come up with your own catchphrase that's going to it's going to give you the courage to go out into the world. Get out your notebook, get out your pen, get out your phone notes, and just write down maybe something that's going to give you a little bit more courage. Maybe it's, give my 100% even if it's 30, right? Maybe it's have courage. Maybe it's be brave. Maybe it's
I rise to the challenge.
Right. But come up with your own, right? We're talking about recipes. We're talking about making it your own. Use our recipe to come up with your own catchphrase that you can say throughout your day, or write on your mirror with a little whiteboard pen, or maybe you have it on your dashboard of your car. Something that just can remind you throughout your day, hey, I'm not alone. And hey, I am so awesome and amazing. I can do it.
I love that. You guys, thank you for tuning in. You can find us on all major platforms, on Instagram, on Facebook,
on X. We even got an X. So I know it sounds like something bad, but it's not. It's Twitter.
So find us on @MomI'mHome podcast with Sarah
and Anna.
And we'll see you guys next week.
Have a good one, guys.